Hey guys, this is going to be a little bit of a different form of video. This is more of just a long rant of mine. I've been thinking really hard and I feel like this makes sense, right? So the basic concept here, the premise is that I feel like more than half the world is kind of asleep at the wheel when it comes to personal finance, wealth, investment, money, be it for handling it for yourself, for your family, for your future. Like the whole concept of, building wealth and being smart with your money. Gino, what do you mean by that? What do you mean half the people seem to be asleep at the wheel? So it's pretty easy to understand, right? Um, okay, so the 9 to 5, working a W-2, being an employee for 40 years and then retiring. The amount of people that fall into that deliberately chose that in the face of all of their options, I think are very, very few. Maybe like 5%, maybe 10%. Because you will meet the person that likes that type of life and thought or tried to do other stuff and then goes back to it, and that all makes sense. But even that person, when they wake up, we'll call it from the matrix and how the system's trying to rob you, basically, even they will start to do things differently in order to ensure that they end up in a better position. Most usually found in ownership. They start investing in stocks, they aspire to buy real estate, and maybe eventually they buy their home. But I'm finding more and more just so many people are asleep at the wheel. They just don't even research any of this stuff. They don't, learn. They don't read books on it. They don't watch videos on it. They don't talk to people about it. They don't talk to their friends about it. They just they don't even assume that things will continue how they have been. They're just living in the now and they don't even know what they don't know. And yet, I would argue most of them know that there's more to this whole wealth game than just working your job and paying your bills, because they will complain. Like they'll know something's off. Well, I can't afford my groceries, and inflation's going crazy, and I don't get my promotion, and my work goes underappreciated, and the companies might fire me, so I'm worried. Whatever it might be, but it certainly feels like they're just kind of asleep at the wheel. And the metaphor that I keep coming back to is, I'm a huge nerd, so Lord of the Rings has always been formative for me and one of my favorite uh, fantasy stories ever. So it's like with Frodo and Sam, when they go out on the quest to take the One Ring to Mount Doom, right, to Mordor. What do you think would have happened if they learned about this whole giant world and they just got scared and said, you know what, I don't know. I know that the world might end. I know, the future looks bleak for this example, but I'm just gonna stay in the Shire and I'll just do what I've always done. I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to meet new people. I'm not going to adventure. I'm not going to risk my comfort, just comfort, let alone safety, right? For the sake of my or anybody else's future. I'm just going to stay doing what I did. And, the story works out in the end because the Fellowship of the Ring succeeds and they destroy the ring, and Sauron is defeated. So the hobbits living in Hobbiton can keep just being hobbits and living their normal life. They eat their breakfast, they eat their lunch, they tend to their garden. Um, they run whatever little business that they've got going on, work at the tavern, whatever it is, go home and sleep. And they never aspire to more, they never seek to grow. They're just stuck in their old ways. And there is beauty in routine, there is beauty in consistency. But what I keep finding is coming back to normal life now. So many people are faced with that big, scary world, the opportunities, the chances, the investments, the money, the entrepreneurship, right? Especially in the US, it's always been such a huge emphasis. It's like a core part of our world. Small business has been part of the American culture since forever, literally forever, considering America's only like 300 some years old now, but at least since then. And so they just get scared and they bow out. It's almost like they don't even want to start the game. It's like you never showed up to the track race because you got too nervous. You never trained, you never researched it, never joined the team, you never ran. You just sit there on the sidelines as you always have. It almost feels to me like, again, with reference to finance and investment, not the other aspects of their life, that they're just kind of like zombies. Or Frodo and Sam just never having accepted the quest, and they just get scared and they retreat. Well, if that's you, this is not the channel you should be watching, because all I talk about is the other side of the coin, going on the wealth adventure, going on the wealth investment journey, trying to figure out your way through it, and encouraging you guys to go out and try your hand at it. And I just feel bad for them. I feel bad for them, and I don't really know what the future holds for them, because as time goes on, that style of life becomes less feasible, or at the very least, I think the middle class is getting obliterated and will turn into just the lower class, and the people with money will have even more, as it's been trending. Inflation's going to kill the middle class and send everybody to the poverty line. I think the poverty line now in Los Angeles County is 110,000 or 108,000 income per year per household. Like, if you're at that level, you're at the poverty line. What? That sounds crazy to most of us in other places. I'm in San Diego and it's not that far off from us, but it just goes to show you how unfeasible the current system is. So I don't think people can afford to just be hobbits anymore and live their life and ignore it and not be worried about it. But they'll continue to do it. And I don't get it. I don't get it because I'm not that way. I don't get it because my parents aren't that way. I don't get it because my grandparents on both sides weren't that way, right? They're not with us anymore, sadly. But even at the youngest of ages, hearing what they did when they were younger, the things that they tried, the things they invested in, the businesses they tried to start, some successfully, some not, like they were always awake, I'll call it, and fully grappling with the reality of the situation, fully grappling with just how life is for money and wealth and investments. And they've always had a really long time horizon. They didn't think just for themselves. They thought, well, what about our kids? And not just their kids, what about their grandkids? And so forth. Lineage has always been super important to my family. And I, for one, have inherited that. I'm not married yet. I'm 28 and I'm already trying to make plans and think about my decisions, not for me and not even for my kids, but for my grandkids and their kids. How can I be intelligent now, grapple with the system and the big evil today in order to bring about the best future for them? Life's really scary and dealing with money is really scary. So I don't necessarily blame people for being scared of it, but I kind of hold it against them when they're scared of it for their entire lives, right? Oh, to have risked it all for love or finances, wealth, business, and to have gained or not. But that's life fully lived. You didn't turn away from something because you were scared. You might have tried something and gone back to it willingly, but knowing that you tried your hand at something else. I don't know. That it brings to mind like all those statistics about, well, most people in the US don't even have $1,000 in their bank account to be able to pay for any emergency whatsoever. And over half of the US also lives paycheck to paycheck and either has a negative net worth or a very stagnant one, because they're dealing with interest payments on credit cards and you know loans for car repairs and loans on their cars. Certainly they don't have paid off cars. But there's never been a time period in life where it's easier to build wealth and play the game of investments and money and try your hand at all of this, because the fruit that bears is freedom and choices for you. When you have none of that, you have very limited freedom in a lot of ways. You must work certain jobs that pay you certain amounts so that you can live safely and feed your family and pay for insurances. You cannot sometimes afford to risk moving your family to a different place or trying a different job or chasing to something that you love, even if it doesn't pay you well, which is one of the greater travesties. I don't know. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them, and I don't know how to help them because my video is not the first video to go up on this topic. There's been countless of this type of stuff before, and I'm not going to be the last one. People are going to be talking about this for the next forever, probably as long as humans are around, honestly. Probably as long as humans are around. So, I don't know. There's so many resources for them to learn and slowly dip their toes into the water and start the journey, but the stats don't lie. How poorly people are prepared financially for what's to come doesn't lie. The fact that there's less and less inheritance being handed down because inflation keeps going up and the cost of living keeps going up. I've just seen it with you know some other family friends where grandparents are selling the property to pay for the grandparents right now. They've got costs, they've got stuff that they need to do, they've got medical bills, they want to go on their travels, they want to go and do all this stuff, and you can't blame them for that. But at the same time, if that was a family property handed down and that disappears, well, then your family in the future can't count on it. Not to say that, grandparents and everybody, or that you should only be putting stuff for the future of your family at the cost of yourself now, but to a certain degree, that's literally what it is. Setting up your family to have an inheritance literally means you didn't spend every last dollar you could yourself, and instead are sacrificing some of your time, energy, and attention to pay it forward for the future generation, understanding that, I don't know, $100 of labor on my end today will be worth thousands for my family in the future. So I will sacrifice $100 of my time, energy, attention, buying power today so that they can have thousands later in their time. That's how it's always been. Plant the tree now so that we don't see this shade. Tree doesn't grow that much in our 30, 40 years left, or however long people have, but in 100 years, that's going to be a great fruit bearing tree. It doesn't mean you shouldn't plant the tree just because you don't see its fruit. And maybe that's at the core of why this has always like bothered me, right? Why this is always kind of stuck in my head, which is I don't get that perspective of I'm not going to plant that fruit tree and care for it now because I don't see its reward. So I'm not going to do it for my future family or even just your community, your country, the rest of the humans on this planet. We're all intertwined. To not want to give more to the future is alien to me, and maybe that's why this zombie finance state bothers me, because that's in essence what you're picking. You're saying my comfort now, just like Sam and Frodo would have had to pick, right, or the rest of the hobbits, my comfort now is worth more to me than the immense generative inheritance it could be for my kids or grandkids or my community or my church or my country in 100 years. If humans thought like that always, well, there would be very little development for any of us. It's because we have the ability to understand that we should morally be helping out future generations and they should have a better life than we had. That's what my parents always said. We're doing this so that you guys can have a better life than we did. That's what my grandparents told my parents. We're doing this so that you can have a better life than we did. And if you go back and back and back, I'm sure it's been the same story. Well, not everybody thinks that way, I guess. But I think they should. I really think they should. And honestly, I think it is a little bit of a moral quandary, a moral question there at the heart of it. Being able to understand that there's something bigger than yourself, that you owe to everyone and your future generations something. We've inherited a lot of systems, we've inherited the internet, we've inherited a lot of free education on the internet from universities and other people that is basically people paying it forward for everybody else. It's there for us now because somebody made the decision to sacrifice now for us into the future. Why don't we do the same thing? Why do so many people choose not to? Because it's scary? Because you might fail? Because, you know, because you want to consume now and not have to worry about that or not care for them? I don't know, man. I feel like if you leave this planet when you're like 70, 80, 90, and you're leaving nothing to anyone other than the memories of when you were around, you're not leaving any philanthropic donations, you're not leaving any inheritance, you haven't built any systems that were helpful to other people beyond just what your work paid you for. I don't know. I don't think that's good. There is such a thing as misliving your life, right? There is such a thing as having made choices that led to a worse life than others, both morally and we'll call it economically. That is possible. You can make the wrong choices, right? You can hurt a lot of people. You can end up in jail. You can steal a lot of money. You can break your relationships. That is possible. So, if that's possible, that means some options in life are better than others for you and for everyone else. And my argument here, that's not really an argument, it's more just a rant, is that I don't understand why so many people choose, I'll call it the abdicating responsibility side. Why do they do that? Oh, they don't know any better. The internet's a thing. It's literally never been easier to understand and learn. And like I said previously, it's not that they don't know something's off, because they'll always, complain about all of this stuff and point out the wrongs. It's that they don't do anything about it after. So if they know it's wrong and they have all the access to the information, at least the most that any human ever in the history of humans, literally to date, 2025, has ever had, I think it's starting to turn into like more of a moral dilemma here. I'm not talking you're a peasant in feudal times and you talk to like 10 foreigners or different people a year, and other than that, your entire circle is your little community, and all you've ever known is farming, right? So you don't know how this all works or what it is. That's not an excuse anymore. You can basically get any bachelor's degree, and I'd argue the equivalent of a master's, purely from just researching your own stuff online. YouTube, Google. With ChatGPT and the other AI tools, it's becoming even easier. So I don't get it. I don't get it, guys. And I tend not to spend too much time thinking about that. We'll call it half of the US and the world that are in zombie mode, but I feel really bad for them. Like what a grand journey they have chosen not to go on to. And they can change their mind anytime. They can start going on that journey at 75. It doesn't matter. You don't age out from choosing to change how you're approaching wealth, finances, in the world, right? You can change at 75 and start helping and contributing and thinking. Well, I could spend $100 on stuff that I want today, but actually I'm only going to spend 70 of that, and I'll put the 30, you know, towards any philanthropic group if you don't have any kids, or towards my kids, or whatever it might be. I don't know. I don't really get it. I guess it's simpler. I guess it's easier. And I know everybody starts there because you're not born with a functioning understanding of how the world works financially, or wealth, or money, or investments, or generating good things for humans. Like, you're taught that because it's human. If it was innate, it'd be instinctual and animals would understand it too. But they don't, mostly. Like, their idea of delayed gratification is much less. Even biologically, I like to think of bears, right? And humans, where when we have a lot of food available, we tend to eat it and we put on the fat stores so that our body can use it when we have less food around, right? For wintertime. That's nature's way of, in a roundabout way, figuring out that we're not smart enough to have, at the start, cultivated the plants and put in labor to have an excess of food later. the way you get around that is, well, we have the instinctual drive to eat, so we just eat, and our body basically reserves that for the future. But even then, it's not even a 1-to-1 ratio. 2 berries eaten today is not the equivalent of having eaten one today and one tomorrow. It's less efficient, but at least it's the natural answer. But we have the ability of planting stuff and farming stuff and caring for the future so that our kids don't even have to worry about just eating as many berries as they can when they run into them. Now humans have the opposite problem. We're too fat. We have too much food, too much nutrition, too many calories. What a blessing to have that problem. But we only have that problem because humans put it forward. Humans tried to generate. They made companies, they made money, they made tech, they built farms, they made bigger farms. They supplied it to each other. If we only had the instinctual drive to eat, we would have eaten all the plants and planted none of them. There goes all the food. But I'm getting sidetracked. I think I'm just confused. I've always been confused because I kind of woke up to the system at a young age because my parents drilled it into me so early on. Of basically, money wise, everything's not as it seems. Life's a lot harder. You got to be smart, and your loyalty lies to your family, not just you. There is more than just you. I don't get it. I hope they wake up one day, but I don't know. I just feel bad because they're the ones that are going to suffer the most from AI and robotics and all this stuff coming up. That's just going to, you're either generative and a creator and trying to figure your way through the system, because just having it on cruise control and being asleep at the wheel, I think is going to have catastrophic consequences for everybody moving forward. But, you know, I'm probably just overthinking it. It's fine. Anyway, that's my rant. If this was at all interesting to you guys, let me know what part was. If you've made it through this long, I think you'll realize that this channel is for you because I talk about the other side. I talk about how to wake up. I talk about how to do all this stuff. I talk about where you can start looking. And it doesn't need to be some grand overt gesture. It can be small things like putting $5 a day or $1 a day into some investment. And you're already starting to play the game. But you got to wake up to do that. Nobody's born, right? And everyone teaches you this, and suddenly it clicks and you're off to your investment journey at the age of 10. That's not how this works. So if you're awake, join me. I talk about this stuff. I'm trying to help you guys. We'll figure it out. Gino out.